Hello, and welcome to the Better Man, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb, and I want to thank you here for joining us. Another great episode of how we can help our players not only become better physically, but better mentally. And we dive into both sides, and we just really see how you really can't have one without the other. And it's really most important that we do this to prepare our athletes for the thing that they will be most in life, which is a man, which is a person. And so today I get the fortunate pleasure to talk about those things with a great friend of mine who've had the privilege of having a great relationship since I've started coaching, is Mr. John Lowery Sr. And this legendary high school coach has a resume that's pretty unbelievable. And so just going to have a chance to say a couple of these things, a little bit of them, but you can surely just type in his name, John Lowery Sr. from Jefferson High School, and he has one of the most impressive resumes that you'll see. But he's actually the only coach that Jefferson's ever had, Jefferson, West Virginia, which opened up in 1972. He is right now the third all-time in high school victories, and he's the first active coach. He is the winningest active coach in high school history. He's won at least 20 games for 43 consecutive seasons. He has a state record 12 state championships, and the West Virginia Player of the Year award is actually named in his honor. It's John Lowery Sr., West Virginia State Baseball Player of the Year. He's coming up on his 51st season as the Cougars Skipper, but is just an absolute legend. Knows an unbelievable amount of baseball, highly respected all throughout the country, and a guy that I've lived 30 minutes away and been able to have lunch with, and always been a guy to be able to answer any questions I may have, talk baseball, and just really fortunate and to know him, and then as well as his son, John Lowery Jr., which will be another conversation, I'm sure, here in the future. But just a great man, and I hopefully do enjoy the conversation. And he gets into a ton of stuff that just kind of helped him be successful all throughout his time here. You figure he got on a Zoom call with me. He's 70, in his mid-70s, and so, but it's just his willingness to adapt and willingness to learn new things and get in there. He's not the most tech savvy person, but he'll try and he'll do what he can. And I just can't thank Coach enough for the time that we had. But just really want you to hopefully you look forward to stuff he talks about. A lot of his BP stuff, what is batting practice. He talks about, he doesn't know. I love his answer when people ask him about how good his teams are going to be, and it really speaks to him having successful men in his program, because that's when he knows if his team was successful, because of what they've become and the kind of careers they have and the type of men that they are. So without further ado, just love to get into this legendary conversation with Coach Lowery Sr. from Jefferson High School.
Well,
Sure, guys.
we're able to play on some travel teams in the summer. We've most of our guys played. Our younger group had a team where they played locally. Toward the end of June, they were finally able to start getting together, and I think they started playing games in July. We had to go through certain protocols to be able to get our school field, which I think all the different groups did around here. So we're able to play. One weekend, I thought it was kind of interesting. We had two of our guys playing on a travel team in Columbus, Ohio, four of them playing out in Bridgeport, West Virginia. We had one down in Alabama playing. We had four down in the Fredericksburg area playing, and we had one in Virginia Beach pitching. So, the kids are getting to play, and we've had a good, nice response to our attempt with our fall program. League out of Frederick with Jeremy Long. I know that you know Jeremy.
Yep. Yeah.
So we're going to hopefully be able to field 2 teams in that, especially during the week. On the weekends, we still have some kids that are playing travel ball, but we've got people who have been through the program or have kids in the program that coach those kids for us now. I know Mike Smith has a travel team. John has a travel team. And so the kids are getting to play. Our state limits our access to our kids in a direct manner, with the exception of when we start practice, and they do allow us to have 12 flex days now, which we can use prior to the start of the season. But again, there's going to be protocols in place with that. They based on the safety standards that the school sets, and with the safety obviously being the primary focus. And but a number of our kids are getting to play, and I've been asked questions about this kid or that kid. We had a couple guys coming in. It's going to be their junior season. It's going to be their kind of season to emerge and see where they are, how they were going to, what the possibilities might be for them. And of course, they've lost that. And some of the younger kids now that are coming in, this is the reason this younger group played this summer is so important. They'll come in, they'll be sophomores, and they didn't get to play at all their freshman year. We did get to practice 2 weeks. We did have 2 inter-squad games. The day they told us we were finished, we were on the verge of our first scrimmage. We were going to scrimmage Urbana, but I think all the Maryland schools have been shut down. And then Greg up at Waynesburg called, and we were going to go up there on that Saturday. But of course, all that went by the wayside. Then they kept pushing it back and look at it again at this date, that date. Kind of like the same scenario you see now with things being pushed back. And I counted up the other day, I think it's approaching 5 months. And I tried to project 5 months into the future, and it just makes you wonder if this thing will be under control even at that point. I know that they're getting ready to play football over here. I know Jefferson's supposed to have a game against a team out of the Charleston area, but I think they're having some issues down there as to whether or not that game will be played.
Okay.
I don't know. I think Martinsburg and Musselman's already had to cancel their opening game because of the situation involving the Martinsburg program with someone being diagnosed. So, a lot of question marks. And as I was opening up to get to you, I saw an email from our athletic director about attendance at games. I guess there's going to be a protocol for that. And yesterday I saw on TV that Notre Dame's only going to let 20% of their people come in, their stands be filled. That would be with students having the first choice on that, and nobody from the outside being allowed in. So it's just a whole lot of I hate to use the word red tape, but a whole lot of process, I guess would be the better word to go through.
Yeah.
Where we need to be in a safe way.
Does it make you think of your future? Does it make you think like, hey, this is just a tough time for me to keep going on? Or you still feel pretty energized to keep working through all this stuff?
Well, that's a good question. All these stuff that involves Zoom meetings. And, I've had that with my team a couple of times. I have to have other people help me get that set up like you did.
Yeah.
John was here to help me get that out. I'm not the most comfortable guy in that realm. I certainly want to stay with this group. We were going to have a nice group last year. And even though we lost 8 of those guys, we're still going to have a nice group this year. So hopefully for those kids' sake, we get to play. I'd like to coach that group. I think we have a nice younger group coming. But obviously it's going to get to a point where, it'd be time to move on. Obviously everything comes to an end. I'd have to reevaluate if for some reason this upcoming season would be put on the back burner. But the reason being, and I'll talk to my wife about this, it'd be 2 years away. And that's a pretty big break. And that might be the right time for someone else to come in and get things established. I think with the contact and knowing the kids that I've had and kids that are coming back and so forth, the 1 year we can get through, especially when we were able to kind of set some groundwork at the beginning of last year with a couple of weeks practice. But 2 weeks, if I was 40 years old, or 2 seasons, excuse me, if I was 40 years old, wouldn't be a question, maybe even 50. But I'm gonna be in the mid 70s, so it will be something to think about.
Yeah, but you don't act like you're mid 70, coach. That's the whole thing.
Well,
That's for sure.
Hopefully, that I can continue to feel good. I think.
Yep. We all love to see you out there too. So, but that's all. I was just wondering how that, if it was a pretty big strain on you. But I understand where you're coming from with being 2 years out, and I hope for sure that, you get out there and you get this next season. That's just really tough. I mean, this will be your 50th upcoming season or 51st if we play this spring.
Well, it'll be the 51st year that I've coached. This past season would have been the 50th.
Okay.
And I guess on how, my athletic director said, you almost have to count that as your 50th season. You did coach for 2 weeks. You did have a couple of squad scrimmages. You got paid for the season for the school,
right?
All the spring sports. And I got to thinking about how do these college guys count that? I guess obviously, it's just one of those things. We put we have a sign up at our building there that puts all the records on it. And of course, we put season canceled, COVID-19. And on either end, we put 2 old masks with 2021. So,
nice.
10 years down the road, they'll look back and say, well, and that's the reason we still put out our booklet, with the idea being that, the kids that were involved this year will have that, look back on as a memory, like a yearbook type thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we'll never forget. So I think that's a great idea, like the season that was really never had. And, I think you definitely, and that's normal, I think that definitely helps them look back. And I think that's a great idea that you do that. So it's like a media guide that you put out and everybody gets it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll get your address and I'll see if you get one if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I love it. Yeah. So yeah, I guess when you're thinking about that, you think of 50 years, man. Like I guess it's something I think we've talked about before, but like because we've talked about how the game is changing, and so like what have you seen so much in all those years? Like you said, if I was 40, and things like that, with doing like what has really changed so much besides, of course, this crazy pandemic, but that you've seen over the 50 years?
Well, I think high school baseball is certainly a more prominent entity now than it was when I first started. We'd go out and we'd play. I know when I was at Harpers Ferry, we might play Charlestown a couple times, Shepherdstown a couple times. I think we played 20 games my first year. I just think there's more interest in baseball, people playing on weekends and so forth. But I think from a more significant standpoint, I think as time's gone on, the technology, the travel teams, all those things that have come to the forefront to help players develop their skills. And while I think those are good things at times, I think at times, it's interesting to see how kids, I think, come to depend on that stuff and are so concerned about maybe their velocity and some of the other terminology that's coming to the game, launch angle, exit velocity, and things of that nature that, I think they're good if you can use them in the correct way. I think obviously as high school coaches, we, for the most part, take the kids that come into us, and those kids are not all going to be skilled to the level where they can aspire to light up the radar gun to a certain velocity. So what I've always tried to do is to try to learn the game at this level. And as they get older, as they get more mature, if they continue their interests, then they can aspire to some of those other things that might help them to get to the next level. But there's a certain basis to the game that you have to be able to understand, be able to react to situations, be able to understand the adversity of the game, be able to understand the sacrifice involved in the game, being able to break the game down to its lowest level, which is one pitch, and concentrate one pitch at a time. You can practice concentration as well as you're as your regular skills. And all these things, I think, are significant, especially at our level. But I think sometimes those things get lost sight of when they start looking at the end of the tunnel instead of the trip through the tunnel to get to that light at the end of the tunnel that they aspire to. I think it's great to aspire to play at the next level, but there's a process that you have to go through to get to it. And I think sometimes when kids, I look back at my youth. I look back, and you could probably relate to this in your youth. I look back to my sons and their youth. A lot of things they figured out through repetition. What made it work for them. Something didn't work, they worked at it until they got it down to where it made it work. And I think the ones that are most dedicated might still have a lot of that, but I think there's some that kind of lose sight of that and they get discouraged because well, this coach told me to do this, and I get I think there's a personal responsibility that comes with this game as well as any game, to figure certain things out, to be able to take the information you have at your hand and utilize it and find out what works best for you and take that and try to advance your skill set with it.
Sure, and I know that you have your baseball mind. You have what you've learned throughout this process. You have so many, like you talk about the knowledge that you need to have at this level, and like all the situations and things that you see in the game. Like how are you able to, when that guy you said when you first get them, they're not going to have that knowledge, and especially now it's maybe more skill oriented than it is situational. And I know you have all these situational thoughts. How are you helping develop those kids more to give them that intelligence? Like what do you do with all your situational knowledge and expertise in the game?
Well, we try to practice at game speed. I think that's an important thing. And one thing we do every day in practice, we'll do it 45 minutes to an hour. We play what we call situation BP or with coach pitch, and we just play the game. And and you can create different scenarios within that. You can start with a runner on third and say there's less than 2 outs, try to hit a ground ball to get him in. Or maybe if the guy's up, you create a squeeze situation. Or the coach who's pitching, when we do get runners on, he'll mix in balls in the dirt so that they have to react to the ball in the dirt. You got to concentrate on every pitch so that you don't miss those kind of things. And if you practice those things, I think it's easier to do those kind of things. And the kids, I've never charted it specifically, but if you take the number of games we play, we're fortunate in West Virginia, we get to play 32 games. And if we're, have success in our tournament, we could get to 40 games by the end of the season, which is, that's a pretty nice season for us, the length of time we get to play. But if you add in all the at-bats they get in our scrimmage or BP scrimmage games, they'll get several hundred bats during the course of the year. And the guys, everything's done at game speed. You're playing, you change after maybe one day you'll want to change after every 3 outs, and you'll work on getting them in and out quickly. Again, that's something to practice. You just say, oh, you want them to hustle in, you want them to hustle out, but how do you expect them to do it if you don't practice it?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you might go through, say, okay, let's see if we can go 9 outs in a row without making a mistake. Or, we will create a bottom of the 7th situation, score tied. Or bottom of the 7th, maybe we're a run behind, getting bunts down. All the little nuances, little things that come up in the game that we try to practice, repetition. And of course, and this is no secret. Everybody knows this. As coaches baseball, you create your situations, with your outfield relays and the communication and your fly ball priorities and things of those nature. I don't think you can expect kids to do things they don't practice. And, my coach, and I had a coach in college, Joe Retton, he was the basketball coach up there at Fairmont, and he was also the assistant in baseball. And the word was, even though he was, when he retired, I think he had the winningest percentage nationwide of any college coach at that particular point.
Wow.
And, but they say he loved baseball the best. And that's what he would always say. And he said, how can you expect people to do things you don't practice? So, whether it's covering first, whether it's getting off the mound to back up, whether it's going to front of the dugout and breaking the third, or the behind the plate on the throw in. We have there's two things I picked up at clinics that I thought were good, And, if you can get coaches or get teams to get your team to understand this, what do you do when the ball's not hit to you? I mean, you just don't stand there and watch. You might be the right fielder, ball's hit the left field, you move down so the ball's overthrown at second. Or at any time during your scrimmage, you can look at one of your players and say, what do you know? And he might say, well, there's 2 outs, we're run behind, we're playing outs. The guy at the plate doesn't run very well, so we can get it that step or 2 deeper. Things of that nature. Just anything like that gets them to concentrate, that gets them to think. And that's the way we try to approach it. And, I think we've been successful with it. I think the kids enjoy it. They like practice. We get a lot of response. Gene Kearns, you remember Gene Kearns?
Oh, yeah.
Gene told me one time, when he was scouting, he'd say, you seem to be able to get all the guys out who, your program seems to be able to get all the guys out who want to play baseball. And, there was a period of time there, I think that was the truth. And, times are changing a little bit. Kids they're getting, other interests and things. But I think, we've been fortunate to attract a large number of kids to come out. And I know before the schools split, we get between 80 and 90 out, which was misfortunate because there were some kids that would miss out on the opportunity to play.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that still pleases me, is the fact that we've been able to, I feel, continue with a similar level of success after the school split that we had before the school split. Give you an example of what I'm talking about. Before, we had a kid just passed away, a kid named Adam Stephen, and he was in our program, and we had a couple of JV teams. We'd have so many kids out, and his senior year, he didn't make the final roster, and he ended up going to Davis Nelkins to play and pitched in college. And of course, it made me think, what in the world did I, so what did I miss here? But, and of course, he just passed away the other day. That's the reason I bring that story up. It's, we've just been fortunate to having a lot of interest. I mean, you've been around long enough to know the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia. There's a lot of interest in baseball, and that extends on out up toward the Cumberland, or in the Cumberlands of Maryland, Kaiser area, with John Kruk, Travis Harper from Circleville, the Creek, Doug Creek, Martinsburg. Martinsburg's won states, I think 4 state championships, Edisville, Berkeley Springs. So there's state championships throughout the Panhandle, and it's very, very competitive. And I've just been fortunate enough to love baseball, number one, obviously, and to be in the right spot at the right time, to be able to have the opportunity to work at this school since its inception and watch the program grow. So
yeah, it's been nice. I mean, a lot of those guys you talk about too being competitive come from your coaching tree too. They
well,
their...
I appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
We've had a lot of talented guys.
Yep.
We've had a lot of good assistant coaches, and that goes, and a lot of support with the people. I mean, you've seen our facility and the way it's grown and improved, and that's all a result of community effort and guys that have played for me helping us coach. And, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know we've talked about your staffs in the past. You're fortunate to have a good number of guys help you. Has it always been that way, or is that something you've kind of worked to in the past couple of years?
Well, it's been that way, I'd say, since the early 2000s anyway. There for the longest time, Bruce Davison, who's passed away now, he was my assistant coach for 23 years. And then he went over to Washington when Ed Holton became a head coach. He and Buzz Jackson, those were the 3 of us, basically. And then as time went on and, we added our JV program, we felt that it was, it'd be helpful to have a couple assistant coaches at the JV level, because that's where you're starting to develop guys.
Yeah.
And, and when we, the volunteer coach program started over here, where guys could take their coaching classes through the West Virginia Secondary Schools Activities Commission to get certified. They were willing to do that, and we had guys who had played in the program, and they came back. Of course, some of them, their children were starting to come through the program. But the interesting part of that is we've had people, even after their children have or there are young men, I shouldn't say children, young men have gone through the program that have stayed and helped as well. So, and I think that continuity, helps because the kids know what to expect when they get there. It's been very helpful.
How are you able to manage all the like as many staff members as you have? I know you said what you have 10, like you had like close to 10, I think, one time.
Well, some of those guys, they might come at particular times based on their work schedules. Obviously.
Sure.
They can't drop everything and come to baseball, but and we break down when we do our drill work. Obviously, we have a couple infield drills where you use 2 fungo hitters. We have an outfield drill where we use 3 fungo hitters. We have always like to have guys that can throw BP. In my mid-70s, I don't throw BP. So I think the more, a couple of those guys are young, can still throw, they're very helpful. If you have kids that are, when you break down with the building, when you send them in the cage to hit, you can send someone in there with them. Obviously, when you have kids that are by themselves like that, you need for them to be supervised so that something doesn't happen or somebody doesn't get hurt, you don't have a liability issue.
Sure.
And, that it's just a matter of staying organized, breaking down in the groups. You can do, all the drills. You get your middle infielders. You can work your feeds. You can work the footwork around the bag at first. You can work your catchers on blocking. You can work, the outfielders on drop steps, going to pick balls up at the fence. Just getting behind a fly ball and moving into it so that you can get something on your throw. People don't realize all the little various techniques that are involved in baseball. I've often thought it'd be interesting to sit down and just, you can put your infielders in a box drill and have them work on all their feeds, feed away from the glove, feed to the glove, underhand feed, overhand feed, backhand feed. You can have them work on a force out. You can have them work on a catch and tag. It's all the little fundamental things that are going to come up in the game. And again, I think the more you practice those things, the more confident they get in doing them, more comfortable they'll get in doing them. It almost becomes a muscle memory, second nature for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, it's just I just kept I keep going. I keep thinking of like when you talk about the game stuff too. I just know you've been in so many big games. Like what how have you, I guess, like your game management and how you run a game is superior to many. You've been in so many big games. What has really kind of allowed you to manage the game as well as you could?
I'll tell you, that's one thing where the coaches really come in. They'll keep an eye on one area they come in as well as others. Keep an eye on the depth of your outfielders, situations, the outs. Coach Cross does a good job. He charts every game we play, but he keeps specific information on all our local teams that we have to play from a tournament standpoint.
Okay.
And he'll be able to, he can go back and tell you how we got a kid out when he was a sophomore and when we're playing him as a senior. Now, it could be that the kid has improved from that, and then you make the necessary adjustment. But still, if there's a certain pitch that he struggled with and he sees that, he calls the pitches, and we've had a lot of success with that. I always, you try to anticipate ahead. I think anticipation is the key to it. I tell kids all the time, especially in backup situations, I said, you want to anticipate an overthrow. You don't want to react to the overthrow. In other words, you don't want to wait till it's overthrown, then go get it. You want to be there in case it is overthrown. Well, it's kind of the same way with coaching moves. You try to anticipate what the other team might do. I know, I'll give you an example. You get a 3-2 count, 2 out. You might be able to backpick somebody at first base, or if you're in your stretch and the bases are loaded, you might be able to inside move somebody.
Okay.
Or if just little things like that you try to you pick up on, and watching the depth of their infielders, and maybe you can drop a bunt if you got a guy who can run, and if the score of the game late, you have several runs lead, you get your guys to understand the value of playing outs. Instead of, like if a ground ball hit to the glove side of second base with a runner on first, rather than trying to make the hard play going to second, take the easy out at first. Now you're down to a 2-out inning. That guy on second would happen to score. You're still 3 runs ahead. So, little things like that all try to factor into your thought process, and that's what makes it fun. You watch a lot of games and you see how other people react. I'll tell you who was really good at that, and I don't know if this name rings a bell with you, but it'd be Cal Bailey, who's a longtime West Virginia State college, now university coach, who just passed away this past spring. He was always around the state tournament when you'd go down there, and in fact, he came up here. He spoke at our banquet one year, and he came, and when I used to have a camp, he'd come and help. But he was just so good at analyzing and picking out little nuanced things, and he'd say things that that just resonated with you to help you to be able to make you think a little bit when certain situations came up. And he was just a great guy. And, he ended up played AAA with the Pirates. He was, for those old timers who might be listening, he was Richie Hebner's roommate in minor leagues. Hebner being the third baseman the Pirates had there for a number of years. But again, I think it's repetition, being around, watching the game. That's how you learn it. You got to be willing to invest the time if you want the result. It's like Cal Senior used to say this every year at his camps when he'd have them up at Mount St. Mary's. He says it's hard to get any money out of the bank if you don't put some money in the bank. He says, well, it's hard to see any results in your play if you're not willing to invest some time in your play. That's what he'd say, and that's well taken.
It's hard to get money out of the bank if you don't put money into it.
Right. Now you're not going to get much interest on the money you put in, but that wasn't the message.
That's good. That's great. So Cal Senior, so you said Cal Senior will come up?
Well, Cal Senior, I'll tell you, let me tell you a funny story about Cal Senior. Twice I had clinics at the school. And the one year I wanted to have him come up. And so, I had his phone number from Jim Gilbert. I called him up, and I'd met him a time or two, and I just started working at the camp they had up at Mount St. Mary's. So I called Cal Senior up and told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a camp on a weekend, and I was wondering if he could come up, and maybe if Billy and Cal Jr. could come up. Well, Cal Jr. was out of the equation, but Billy came up with him. But anyway, I started talking about this and that, and he listened. Then he said, John, he says, I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it, he said. I said, okay, Cal, go ahead, let me know. So anyway, he had it all organized out, who would speak and how how the clinic would run. And his fee was $1,000. And if we didn't make enough money at the gate to cover his $1,000, I had a guy in the community who told me he would sponsor it. But when he came up, it was a lot of success. So anyway, I go give him a check for $1,000, and he says, John, he says, that's too much money for what I did here today. He said, you need something for your program? I said, well, we're trying to get a batting cage down our right field side, and he said, well, you get that batting cage, and you let me know what it costs. Anyway, he ends up sending us $500 back.
Really?
That was, pretty neat. So he was
awesome.
A great guy. He was a great guy.
That is great. Yeah, I mean, and same thing with Cal Bailey. I mean, you don't hear too many bad stories about Cal, that's for sure.
He was. Both those guys were ones of a kind that loved the game, and I think they showed what the investment of time and effort and into the game, what it could result to for you. I mean, they certainly invested their lives in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cut from the same cloth you are. That's for sure. That's for sure. But so thinking about that, like just in your lifetime and what you've seen, besides, of course, the, like you said, the little language, little technology, I think we see those things. What do you feel has stayed the same? Has there been much that stayed the same, or what things kind of still stay true to this day?
Well, again, I think, like I said earlier, and I tried to make a few notes over here, and I want to overlook anything that I might have put down, but I think you got to. It starts with the fundamentals. It starts with the fundamentals and repetition. And that's a mental challenge a lot of times. That's where the discipline comes in, the practicing the discipline, practicing the mental concentration. A lot of people sit back and they'll watch a game, and I've heard this said that everybody thinks that they know a lot about the game simply, because they played softball, they played some. And I'm not knocking that in any way when I say softball. I'm not talking about the fast pitch softball, the organized softball that's played, because the same level of fundamental and execution is needed in that. I'm talking about backyard softball or church softball where you go out and you just have fun. Well, it looks like it's an easy game, but it's not an easy game. And, when you throw into situations and it's just a game that requires that fundamental approach, the things that you need to do, being able to get a bunt down, how to round a base at first, how to communicate with your teammates, being willing to take a pitch to get base runners. Everybody wants to hit. That's great. But, base hits don't score runs. Base runners score runs. So if you can convince your kids that getting hit by a pitch you could applaud that. If you can taking pitches to get a walk. In today's game with the pitch count, that's big because you get the pitch count off the other guy, you can get him out of the game. That's another thing to talk about as far as management of the game is concerned. Keeping track of that in your dugout. I just think there's certain fundamental assets to the game that have not changed, and that's what comes down to the execution part of it. I think, remember Billy Wagner?
Yes.
Billy Wagner was a left-handed relief pitcher, the big league,
Yes.
for 17 years. And you get the Inside Pitch magazine from baseball, and he coaches at a school down in the Charlottesville area. But he made the comment, trouble with a lot of guys now, with all this travel ball and all the other things, they get D1-itis. They think about, and again, referring back to what I said earlier, I think it's good to have goals and aspiration. You have long-term goals, you have short-term goals, but you got to work through your short-term goals to get to the long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what stayed the same. I mean, that's nothing specific to the game. That's just investing the time in the game, and that's certainly something that people need to understand. One of the goals I have as a coach is if a kid is so inclined and he has that interest, if he can get an education out of baseball, then baseball's done a great thing for him. I heard Marquise, I think I'm saying his last name correct. He was the head coach at Stanford. Speaking at a clinic one time, he talked about the pyramid effect, and I'm sure that you probably heard that. But, we start out at the bottom, the pyramid's wide, everybody plays. And as you start to advance, as you get older, the pyramid starts to go up and it starts to narrow down a little bit. And what that symbolizes is that, there's going to be less people playing because of the skill level involved, between, let's say, Little League and Pony League or Youth League or whatever the next league is now. Then the high school, then the college, then even to the professional, you get to hear it. Then you get to the big leagues, it really gets narrow. Mm-hmm. And then right at the top, there's very few people that can play the game the entirety of their life and never have somebody tell them, well, you're not good enough to play now. You're not good enough to play. The only ones that might escape that would be the Derek Jeters, the Cal Ripken Juniors, people of that nature who are Hall of Famers. So with all that in mind, there have to be other values and things that you take away from the game. If what we're doing is, so do we learn teamwork? Do we learn sacrifice? Do we learn self-discipline? Do we learn how to accept adversity? Do we learn how to be a good teammate? Do we, all those things factor in to what you're going to have to be able to do after you get done playing baseball or as you live your life. And, a lot of people ask me about our team, what kind of team you have. And it's kind of cliche-ish, but I think it's a good point. And I've heard it said, ask me 20 years from now. Now, are these guys that played, are they good fathers? Are they good husbands? Are they providing for their family well? Are they well settled with, in life and in a position in which they're happy? Yeah, we had a good team. We might have been 30-2, or we might have been 14-7 25, but in the end, who remembers that? I hate to go over I guess I'm kind of going off the subject here a little bit, but
No, it's great. It's great, Coach.
I just think that's why we do the things we do. We try to help them get to that point and, beyond the baseball, and understand that the baseball is not the end all. They can use baseball as a vehicle. They can have a good time and create some lifetime friends and some relationships that they can carry on with them. I think that, baseball served them well. And I think yourself and your love for coaching the game, and myself, and you can look around at others the same way. We've been fortunate to given that interest level that we want to continue our interest in the game, because certainly we were told at some point we weren't good enough to play anymore, right? So,
you're right.
But we've been able to stay in it. But just a lot of things. I'm sure you've heard this. They say you grow up gripping the baseball, but in the end, the ball has a grip on you. So I think that's where it comes down to.
For certain.
Where we're at. So.
You're right. And I was thinking, beyond those lessons, I mean, of course, and even this, you said you had Zoom links, Zoom calls with your team. But just, I mean, what a great example this is, this pandemic right now to teach us lessons, just the perspective we have now on not being able to play the game. But what are some ways that you try to teach and convey those messages to your teams? Are there specific ways that you try to do that? I know you take your teams away a lot. You guys travel some. Is there anything that you guys might do during the year, or is this something that you kind of take case by case to say, hey, we gotta do this better?
Well, I think you got to hold them accountable. The discipline part of it. I think they learned through that. Last year, we had a group of our players that would help some of our incoming players if they had some issues with their studies, kind of tutor them a little bit.
Nice.
We get involved in the community. We help with the apple butter down here at the fire hall. So we do some community things like that help. We work the gates at the fair. That's things that, kind of get back to the community, and it also keeps us together as a group because, it's the Jefferson baseball team that's doing that. So, and those are the things I think that help build that camaraderie beyond the 3-month period that you are with them. And that kind of leads me to another point too. Back in my time at a larger school, you had a lot of guys that maybe played 3 sports. Now you don't have that very much. And, especially the school. Of course, I didn't go to a school that's nearly as large as what Jefferson is, 1,300. But anyway, so, you're not interrupting their involvement in another sport. You encourage their involvement in another sport. We never discourage, like one of our better pitchers next spring's likely going to be the starting quarterback on the football team. And I think that's good because that puts him in more competitive situations, more pressure situations to be able to react to. And I just think that's good. But a lot of kids don't play the 3 sports anymore like they do. So we try to give them, through our flex practices, through the fall program and so forth, a vehicle to stay active. And we've had some, we have our off-season conditioning program too that we worked. That was really successful last year. Actually, the last 2 or 3 years, we started it 3 years ago on a more specific nature, and it's really grown. I'm just hoping that we're going to be able to do that this year. Our weight room's not that big. You got a lot of guys in there working, and how they're going to view that or not, I guess remains to be seen. But it really was a benefit to those who weren't involved in another sport. But I think by holding kids accountable, by having good leadership from your older players, they see how to go about things, how to approach their business. All these things help these guys understand that if they do things the right way, then you can get the result that you're looking for. And that helps build tradition. And I think that they come into the program wanting to sustain the tradition. I think a lot of schools probably say this tradition never graduates. So if you have a program that you want to maintain that, you don't want it just because some good players leave doesn't mean that you have to fall off the other end. You want other guys ready to step up, and that's where the ones that are leaving have been the example for the ones that are coming up. It's how they need to go about their business so that they can be successful and maintain that, the level of accomplishment that they aspire to.
Sure. I mean, because it definitely seems like, I mean, you guys, it's almost like you just reload, you don't really rebuild, and so have you really that's just a testament just to your older kids, or is it other things that you're doing even at the JV level?
Well, we do try to play a full JV schedule. And this is something, after having been in it, I didn't realize this. I found out either last year or the year before, you could play as many JV games as you want, as long as you don't let one kid play in more than 32. So we had 38 JV games scheduled last year. So, so what you do, a couple of you just put all your freshmen out there and let them play. Make sure everybody gets their opportunity. And so I've always felt like it was important to have a full JV schedule. I think that creates interest.
Yeah.
If the kids come out as a freshman and you don't have JV games for them, they're smart enough to see what the older guys have to offer, and they're not interested just in sitting around not playing. But they go on an overnight trip to Bridgeport. We have some kids that are dual rostered that can play back and forth. If we got a pitcher that wants to get some work, he can go down and play. Or if we got a kid, maybe they can. We want him to play all the time, but maybe he runs pretty well. We get in a big game or something, we can bring him up to utilize him maybe as a courtesy runner, things of that nature. But, I think you got to develop your younger guys, and we try to do that by having, a full JV schedule for them. I think that's most.
Yeah, that's super smart with like you're saying, we're just going to play the freshmen so these other kids don't get to 32 games. I think that's a veteran move, man. That is really smart because I think that's how the rule stated even around here is we've always tried to play a full one too, but I think it's about games. So you could, if you have enough, certain kids just won't play, and you just play all that's a super smart. That's very creative.
You can't do that at the varsity level now, but you can,
at JV level. Yeah.
Because for a couple of years there, we had 2 JV teams, and we try to schedule like 24 JV games a piece. Now, from an administrative standpoint, you might get into the problem of the umpire costs and all that type of thing. But we get nice attendance at our JV games where you run your concession stand. And then that's where your booster club comes in to help too, if you need some of that extra, expense taken care of. So.
Sure. Man, that's pretty creative. You got any other tricks of the trade like that? And that's pretty slick there, man. That's a really, really good, really good. But I remember something you've always said, it stuck with me, is that baseball is still a game meant to be played. As much as we want to practice, as much as but I know that's one thing that you've always said, and that's always stuck with me and I think that's why. And I believe it's when I started to practice game much more is after I had the conversation we've had, and you always just say, "Hey, the baseball is meant to be played," and it's just always something that stuck with me.
Well, that's the reason they play 162 games at the professional. There's a random nature to baseball that evens out over a larger sampling. And I know that it's impossible to implement that at perhaps at our level. But with that being said, our tournament now at both the sectional and regional levels is double elimination. So, it's just not that ground ball that hits the pebble and goes over somebody's head that tied in the game. 2 games, well, still that's not a huge sample, but it's more of a sample than the one.
Sure. Yeah. A little bit less luck comes out of it. Yeah.
Right. And with the pitch count and with your depth of pitching and that type of thing.
Makes more strategy.
Right. It makes it fun to now we still haven't got to that level at the state And the reason I think being there is because a lot of times we play our state tournament at a professional venue, the minor league park in Charleston, and that weekend that we play it happens to be open, and you know what rain could do to a double elimination event
Yeah.
with 12 different, 3 classes, 3 double. Yeah. So they need to be able to play their games and move on, because a lot of times the pro team will be coming back in. I think that's the deterrent to that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what you're saying, like, it's just so true. And I think we've seen a lot more of that, the conventions we go to, and you hear a lot of people talk about the situational BP a lot more and just playing the game more, and because baseball for the time. And I can remember, there's mistakes that I made. I was so skill based and all the, breaking things down, and we just didn't do enough situations.
Did you find that your team, were you pleased with the result after having your team exposed to that type of repetition through, scrimmaging a lot? I mean, did you feel that they reacted better in different situations?
It's somewhat, yeah. And if I just felt like the practice was, that we just like, it might have been less reps, but they were just more purposeful.
Yeah.
And so we got the quality of them, and I felt like, even just overall, like they were maturing more, and I thought that was important, and let alone, yes, we gotta help them from a physical standpoint, but that's also even the mental part too, like you said, of what do you know? And I think that's even similar. What do you know, and what are you going to do, and in this situation? So we're still growing the mind, and I think that's what you do really well, without even trying. Like, but it's just the people you've gotten, with the 8 state players you've had. So many guys just know the game because you're putting them in so many good game-like situations that they have to think about them. They got to mature and that. So, I mean, I just feel, like it was just more purposeful. It wasn't just like, here's 50 ground balls, and we're just doing all those things. And because what I struggle with too is a matter of like the pace of practice. I love the high energy and doing things. But like when you try to do game, like it kind of slows down just like our game does, which is fine. And that's where, but it was just what we needed though.
Well, and like you say, I think you hit it on a key point too. I've heard guys, they want to do more in practice just to have fly balls hit to them, ground balls hit to them, and stand out there in the field while somebody's taking batting practice. And so, any of these guys you hear talk at the ABCA and everything, they're all about that, trying to create the game speed, the game atmosphere, and situations that relate directly to the game. So,
yeah, just I mean, just thinking about all the players that you have, because I've already come up to an hour. But I would just think it's like, what have you seen in all these great players in all your years of the players who have been consistent? Is it mainly just is it have you had really great players that haven't been right in the situation, like mature enough for the situation, or mostly all of them just good in every situation and kind of are heads up like that? Is that pretty common, or?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't emphasize the point that over the years we've had a lot of good players. I mean, you've known that. And I'm not.
Yeah.
And there'd be those that would say that I'm stating the obvious, but you look at those guys that made Player of the Year in the state. All of them were really good players. And there are 2 guys that didn't even make that list who early on in the school's history, a young man by the name of Jerry Mahoney, and then Jeff Reynolds, who played AAA for like 10 years. He was our first guy to sign a pro contract. He played in the Valley League and lit the Valley League up. Back when they used to have the January draft, the Yankees drafted him, and Mahoney went on to play at West Virginia University. And both those, in fact, Mahoney pitched Jefferson in the state championship when he was a freshman in high school. So he was a senior when Jefferson first told him. So he helped us to get off on the right foot without question. But those guys were just good players. I mean, you take Josh Sennett. I mean, he was the 32nd player taken in the draft. He was the highest drafted high school player in the history of the state of West Virginia. He was a sandwich pick. That was 1999. Jim Buck Crispin, he was signed out of a tryout camp. John, he got an opportunity to play after his career in Minnesota was over with. Ryan Creek, Doug's brother who made the big leagues, he played AAA. I don't think I think you work with those guys and you help them develop. They got a skill set. You put them in a position to succeed and be able to display that skill set, to use a current word, to showcase that skill set. And certainly all these guys were recognized. I remember not Reynolds, but Sennett and another guy named Jimmy Rhodes who went on to pitch at Oklahoma State and came back to West Virginia. Those guys always played with the Oriolanders when Jim Gilbert had them.
Yep.
The sheriff was
Dean, right?
That. And John Seckler, you remember him? He coached Goretti for a year. Yep. Of course, the most current guy, he just signed a contract a couple of weeks back, Paul Witt. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, for him. But Paul, I'm going to tell you about Paul. Now, this is how dedicated he was to the game. And you don't coach this. You're either this or you're not. We played the state championship game on a Saturday. We get off the field. It's late in the evening. We were fortunate enough to win. Everybody's excited, happy. They want a nice dinner. He and his dad get in the car. They drive to Richmond. He plays in a summer league game that Sunday afternoon. Now, how many guys would have done that? They'd have said, well, they'd have called them up the travel league team. How many? Yep. He'd have called them as well, guys, we just got off the field. I'll see you next. Not Paul. Yep. He was there on that. And you don't put that type of desire or dedication into a guy. And that's the reason you're glad to see people like that get rewarded.
For sure. Yeah, I got a good story like that too. As a guy, Coach Josh Conway. I was just forced to coach him 1 year. I just said, "Here's the ball," and But Gene got him with the. He got drafted by the Mets, by the Braves. I'm sorry. So the Braves got him down to a 2 week, I think. After the draft pick, they put all the draft picks together for like 2 weeks down in Georgia, and they thought they projected him as a third baseman. So he went down there and worked there. Never played third base in his life. And on his way home, he calls me and says, "Hey, Coach, can we go work out at third base? I've never played third base. They project me as third baseman." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, man. We'll do some work. We wait like next week or something." He's like, "Oh, I'll meet you when I get home." He literally drove from Georgia right to the field, and I met him at field that night.
Yeah, all right.
And
you don't coach that. It either is or isn't.
Incredible.
That's another thing. These young guys, and I think that story tells this. They don't. The professional guys, as I understand it, they don't scout performance. They scout tools. Then off the tools that you might have, then they can project. That's the reason a lot of times they'll draft a guy and they might change his position because they think he's better suited for something else.
Yeah. Well, I think what you do is
an athlete going to play for us in high school. He's either going to pitch, play shortstop a lot of times, right? But at the next level, he might be a corner outfielder, or he might be, something outside. But
sure.
They scout tools. They don't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. No, I agree, and they do definitely tools. And I was just thinking, like, I think you do. I think you do still teach that a good, because I'm sure maybe Paul has probably heard you tell these stories of these great players as well. I think that's one great thing that you do as well, with not even, but like at least giving them the role model, giving them the inspiration, giving them say, hey, this is what this kid did. This is what Sennett did. This is how Jimmy Rhodes was. This is how these guys ahead of you have done. And so maybe at least, so if Paul wants to be that guy, he kind of knew those guys ahead of him. Like you said, the traditions never graduated at Jefferson. Those guys have done that. You continue to tell these guys, here's what these guys have done. So, I mean, I think in a way you still very much model it with your consistency and showing up. I think you do a great job of just being able to help them visualize, here's what the great ones do. But yeah, I mean, those guys still have to do the work. Don't get me wrong. That's for daggone sure. But I just still think you do, like you, even with me, and those kind of things, because I've told your stories before, it just, and I think all those things still kind of help a player.
Well, and, I referred back to Coach Retton when I was at Fairmont. Certainly in my mind, I've thought back to him a number of times and how he'd go about things. And, because everybody just admired the basketball program up there. It seemed like a good team too. But, I mean, how those guys went about their business. The football, that 1 year I was there, the football team won the national championship. the basketball team was the national runner-up, and in baseball, we lost the final game in the regional, or we'd have gone to the national tournament. So that was the level of success that school was having, and it was all led by those coaches that were there at the time. And and then you take, I was in phys ed, social studies curriculum. So anyway, you take those coaching classes to those guys, and you get to hear their stories and how they went about things, and you remember those things when you got a chance to go out on your own. I think that's what it's all about, being able to pass things on. You know, we're not going to be here forever. Look at John Thompson.
Yeah.
Just passed away. I guess yesterday,
Yeah.
and all the accolades and the things that are being said, rightfully so, about him and his program and his influence that he had over so many people in the Georgetown program that still live today and have influence. So, hopefully that's what we can do as coaches and helping them along, and we can use baseball as the vehicle to do that. And I think we're blessed in that regard. So,
I couldn't agree more, Coach. And I know we've been over here an hour now. I don't want to keep you more than what I told you, but man, I couldn't agree more. We've been certainly blessed, and I'm very blessed to have been able to have this conversation with you for sure. Just actually get one recorded and let everybody else share, these things that I'm just fortunate enough to talk to you about.
well, I really enjoy doing these things. Anytime you have anything that you like this, I'm always happy to be a part of it. I enjoy talking about it as much as you do. So
Yeah.
like that day we had lunch over there at the wasn't it
Yeah.
Bavarian? It was Clarion, I guess it was.
Yeah, it was a Clarion.
Sometime once the restaurants open back up.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that again. Especially now since we don't have the ABCA either. So we'll have to maybe make a date in January. Instead of the ABCA, we'll just go talk some baseball.
Right, right.
Sound good?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That was John Lowery Sr. from Jefferson High School. Great man who has given his life to the baseball and has a tremendous passion for it still to this day. You go to play him, you go to scrimmage him, and you'll see that passion is still very, very strong for the game. And I just want to thank him for the time, opportunity for being able to have this conversation, record it, and be able to put it out. And because he's such a legend in our area, legend in the country for high school baseball for certain. But there's been countless guys that he's been sent on. You heard about the guys that he's had drafted and their facilities, what they are right now through all the booster club that he has, the alumni support. Um, he just has a tremendous facility, an unbelievable program, incredible consistency that they have. And again, like I said, you go to play him, you know real quick, you're in for a dogfight. So a couple of things that I just man, just really stick out to me was I loved how he put it in very simply about two things you want players to know is what do you do when the ball is not hit to you, and just what do you know. Typically, just having the conversation about what to do with the baseball, having them thinking about making sure that they're mature. He loved to put his players in game-like positions. I heard a lot about that, and now putting them. I just don't think in baseball we do so many isolated things that we're not putting them in enough situations. I know something I've always tried to get better at as a coach and putting them more in situations, even when it comes to base running too, like making it live and having people make good reads. It's too fixed. It's too just not challenging enough, and I think it comes back to being showing kids how to fail. That's how if we're failing putting them in game like situations and they fail, I think that is what is where our money's at. Um, but it's really tough for us to feel that, we're trying to have kids be okay with failing, as well as seeing our kids fail. But if they're failing the right way, I think that's where it really help. Um, I just talk about a great. I've always known about him wanting to play so many games, and I just thought that was a really cool thing he said with his JV schedule and just finding ways to we all have rules, we all have guidelines we need to meet, and how can we make those rules and how can we be creative to help our kids. Just like with him playing a huge JV schedule, but then certain guys might only play so many games because they can only play so many in a year. But that's one thing that's really tough is true is the JV schedule is what we do with those guys. What we do with our JV program, and we all especially if we're talking development throughout, then JV is important. And but you gotta have the guys too to be able to play and throw. And so if you have the opportunity to do that, I think definitely a full JV schedule has really seemed to help him be very consistent because they reload, they don't rebuild. Um, but again, I just want to thank you guys for joining us here in the Better Man, Better Ball Player podcast, where each week we try to dive into more strategies to help our players, not only from a physical side, but a mental side as well. And want to thank Coach Lowery again for the opportunity. And again, be checking him out for Jefferson High School uh, as he continues his legendary career there at Jefferson High School in West Virginia.